Hello, my name is Deb Kitko. I am the Genealogy Librarian here at the Wayne County Public Library in Wooster, Ohio. I have been a full-time genealogy librarian since 1998, and I enjoy my job greatly. I've learned a lot from the time I first started. I consider myself green, and now I consider myself more an advanced researcher. We're going to actually start this series of learning how to research your family history. We're going to start with just a basic beginner's guide, and as we progress through, we're going to look at specific examples of documents, whether it's land deeds, census records, military records, etc., just to give you guys a feel for what is available. You want to go beyond what is available through Family Search and through Ancestry.com. There's two great websites, but there's a whole lot more out there available for researchers to use. So first, let me actually give you a little bit of background about myself. I actually was born and raised in Akron. I moved down to Worcester 21 years ago for the job. I've worked in libraries since I was 16 years old. I have been interested in genealogy since since 7th grade. My one teacher, Mrs. Botee, actually had us do a genealogy poster. She wanted us to include our name, our parents, our grandparents, and our great-grandparents. And so that just sort of was the first thing that introduced me to the world of genealogy. And in 8th grade, I was introduced to the concept of oral histories. 8th grade history teacher decided it'd be a great opportunity for us to select a relative and actually interview him and write up a brief biographical sketch about that individual. And I chose to do my grandpa, to be on my mom's dad. He actually grew up in West Virginia, and he told a lot of good stories about when he was a kid, how he actually would play baseball in the fields and different things like that. So it's really insightful. I still actually have that biographical sketch from clear back in 8th grade. In 11th grade, I was taking a class known as Marriage and Family. It was a new class offered there at Central Howard High School there in Akron. And Mrs. Harvey was a teacher, and she decided it'd be a great opportunity to have her kids actually do a 6-week project on family history. She wanted us to focus just not only on names, places, and dates, but she wanted us to look at a little bit of the medical history as well. And she didn't have very many parameters for us to follow. She gave a few guidelines, and she just pretty much let us go to town, do whatever we could. And she said, just research your family as far back as you can. At the time, my mom was a stay-at-home mom, and my maternal grandmother actually just lived up the road about 3 doors. And so when I'd be in school, my mom and my grandma would actually spend their time going through a lot of scraps of paper, memorial cards, obituaries, a lot of information there that my grandmother had accumulated over the years. And with their help, with my grandmother's help and my mom's help, we ended up typing up the final product. It was in a 1-inch binder, and it's actually typewritten, so that gives you a little bit of time period. We did this before we actually had an actual computer. And I actually have my dad's side on the left side as you're looking at the paper, and my mom's side was on the right side. And at the end of that 6-week course, I just fell in love with doing genealogy, and I thought this would be awesome if I'd actually ever get a career in genealogy. So here I am, 21 years ago. I did, my dream actually came true. I became a full-time genealogy librarian. Enough about my background. We're going to talk a little bit on how to get started with genealogy. And when you get started with genealogy, you want to start with yourself and you work your way backwards. So if you've heard his family story that you've related to Andrew Jackson, or related to Matt Anthony Wayne, or something like that, you don't want to start with the well-known person and work your way forwards. You're going to easily get sidetracked on the wrong line. You want to start with yourself, and you want to work your way backwards. You want to get the proper citations, the proper documentations. So with me, I'd start with, my marriage record and my birth record. With my parents, they're both living, so I want to get their birth records and marriage record as well. And yes, I know the information firsthand, but I want to get the documents now so future generations will have the documentation within our family history, where they don't have to go to the courthouse or won't have to actually go to the health department to actually obtain these copies. So you want to just sort of collect the documentation as you're going. For my grandparents, I wanted to get their birth records, their marriage certificate, as well as their death records and their obituaries and the memorial card. I also have a few stories that I've actually recorded and I want to actually use those as part of my family genealogy. So that's basically how you start. You start with what you know, and you work your way back to what you don't know. When you're actually first getting started in genealogy, when you come to our department, we actually provide you with 2 basic tools. This is the old traditional paper form. There are other ways you can do it on the internet. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. But the 2 forms that we use would be a 5-generation ancestor chart. This one is one we have in our department. I actually printed this off from the Ohio Genealogical Society's website, and that's www.ogs.org. And this one, you start with yourself as being number 1 as the researcher. You fill in what information you know, such as birth, birthplace, marriage. If you're getting with the older generation, you want to include a death date, a place of death. And you just, so number 1, I put myself here, and I include my maiden name. Up here would be my father's name. Down here is my mom's name. And then over here for numbers 4 and 5, I would include my father's parents. Number 6 and 7 would be my mom's parents. And I fill in once again what information I have there. There is a little legend up here at the top. So B means birth, P means place of birth, D is death date, and once again the P would be the place of death. So you want to record this all in pencil unless you are 100% sure of the information. And you want to include, a couple just for filling this out, surnames you want to have in all capital letters. And that is so it is distinguished from a middle name or a first name. Because a lot of times when you're doing research, you may find that someone's middle name is actually the mother's maiden name or the grandmother's maiden name. And you can easily get confused. So to help eliminate that confusion, you just actually type in the surnames all capital letters. The other way, you want to write the date. Most people here in the United States, we write the date, like 3/10/19, for example. Okay, so we have the date 3/10/19, which is how a lot of us actually write the dates here in the United States. When you're working with genealogy, this proposes a little bit of confusion. What date is this? Take a few moments to just think. Could it be March 10th of 2019? Or is it October 3rd of, 1919? You don't know based on this information. So the way that we want to write the date in genealogy is that you put the day first. So let's put 10. And then you use the first 3 letters of the month. And then you use a 4-digit year. So, and when you're filling out your ancestor chart or your family group sheet, we're going to look here shortly, you actually want to include the date as 10 March 1819 or, 1719 or 1919, whatever the year is. So you want the day, the first 3 letters of the month, and then the 4-digit year. Okay, so that's the basic, this is the 1 form. This is the 5-generation ancestor chart. Once again, the one we have here is 5 generations. If you happen to have someone who's compiled a genealogy or information beyond the 5th generation, people ask, well, what do you do then? You only have room for 5 generations on here. Well, if you actually, for example, if you know the parent of number 16 here, 16 now becomes number 1 on a new pedigree chart. And you fill in the information, and once again, you put number 16's father here and mom here. You just keep going back. The other form, or this one focuses more on a direct lineage going from the parents to the grandparents to the great-grandparents, great-great-grandparents. We also have a form called a family group sheet. And with this one gives you the opportunity to actually list the kids' names. So each of these family group sheets represent a family unit. A family unit would be a father, a mother, and the kids. And you would list the kids in birth order from the oldest to the youngest, filling in what information you have. This particular chart only goes up to 10 kids on this one. We do have another one in our department that goes up to 15. Once again, this is a form that's available for a free download through the Ohio Genealogical Society's website. The top half you'll see actually gives a lot more room for details. It's going to ask you for information such as church affiliation, for the military, for the occupation, the places of residence. There's an area here for other spouses, because a lot of times, you may have an ancestor that's married 2, 3, maybe even 4 times. So this gives you a place to actually indicate that on here. And then right here is for the mom, and then her information, and then the kids and all of their information. If you have more than 10 kids, you can always use the back side of this paper, or you can always just attach a new sheet with that. This, once again, is actually for the birthplace, the birth date, the marriage information, the spouse information, that kind of information on here. But you may wonder, or you may ask yourself, well, I don't want to get sidetracked. I get so confused if I go with more of the aunts and uncles. I want to just research the parents, the grandparents, the great-grandparents. I'm just interested either in my mom's line or my father's line. Well, that presents a small problem as you get further into your advanced research. Eventually, you're going to come to a brick wall, and you're not going to be able to break through that brick wall. A brick wall meaning that you find an obstacle that prevents you from going from one generation to the next generation. Or you find a brick wall that you have difficulty trying to find the maiden name of the wife. Or you have a brick wall that, you have a gap that there could be some missing kids. So if you actually want to try to break through these genealogy brick walls, you're going to want to research what we call the collateral lines. The collateral lines would be the aunts, the uncles, the cousins, the nieces and nephews. A lot of times in the early history, it'd be the daughters in the family or the mothers in the family that would actually keep track of the family information. So if you're descended from one of the sons, there's a good possibility that that son may not know a lot of the information on your direct ancestor. And if you don't research the other siblings involved with that family, you may miss out on a great opportunity of going back another generation. The example I use a lot of times, say for example that you have a family of 8 children. They were all born in Ohio and they all died in Ohio. And in Ohio, after December 1908, the state took over, and there's more complete information on the forms. We'll talk more about vital records in another session. But after the December 1908 death certificates in Ohio, it usually would include the parents' names and the place of birth of the parents. So if you have 8 kids, and let's say all 8 of them died in Ohio, you may have, 4 of those kids that may indicate that they did not know who their parents were. Remember, the information on the death certificate is going to be dependent on how informed the informant is. And if the informant didn't know the information is not going to be included on that death certificate. So as you're going through the research, if you actually get all 8 of those death certificates, you may find, 4 that they don't know they know the father, but they don't know the mother. You may find another 2 that they have the parents' names, and they may just say Pennsylvania as the birthplace. Or you may have 1 out of the 8 kids whose informant actually knew the information, and they indicate that the father was born in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, and the mom was born in Washington County, Pennsylvania. And more likely, that ancestor, that individual that you had found the death certificate on is not going to be your direct line. So if you would have focused just on a direct line, you would have missed that very important clue in terms of where to go to research in Pennsylvania. That's just one example about why you want to look at the collateral lines. Also, a lot of times you may not find a marriage record. You may have a problem trying to find the maiden name of the female. And if that's the case, you may want to look at the neighbors next to your ancestor. And we'll talk about that a little later on. That's something that's using something called a fan club. Fan club meaning, you're researching the friends, the associates, and the neighbors. So, but that's more for the advanced, and like I said, we'll actually progress to that point later on down the road. So at this point, I provide you 2 tools. You have the ancestor chart and you have the family group sheet. It's important that you actually fill these out. Like I said, we have them in paper form, or you can actually invest in a genealogy software program. There's many out there for both the Apple computer as well as the PC. Or there's a lot more websites now going that you can actually enter the information in directly onto their websites, such as FamilySearch.org or Ancestry.com. And there's going to be a few differences in that. We'll talk about that a little later on also. So whatever means is going to be best for you, whether it's through electronic way or through the paper way or a combination of both, you'll want to begin recording the information that you do know at this point in terms of your parents, your grandparents, your great-grandparents, the birth information, the places of residence, where they were born, where they died, place of death, all that kind of information, as well as begin recording the children of your grandparents, the children of your great-grandparents, etc. So at this point, that's just a basic guide on how to actually record your information, and we'll go a little bit further at the next session. Okay. Thank you, and have fun. Begin filling out those family group sheets and those pedigree charts. If you need help, we have 3 individuals here in the library, in the genealogy department, that are more than willing to sit down and help you fill them out if you have any questions. You can contact us at 330-262-0916 and just choose a genealogy extension, or you can actually come in and visit us. We're open at 10 o'clock every morning from Monday through Saturday. And we're open until 8 o'clock on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays, 5 o'clock on Wednesdays and Fridays. Saturdays we're open until 2 o'clock. There's no charge to use our department, and even if you're just trying to get started or if you're a brick wall, feel free to come in and talk with myself, with Elaine, or with Christina. And either 3 of us would be able to sit down and help you out a little bit. So let's go and get started with that journey, begin recording the information, and we'll see you at the next session. Thank you.